afternoon. There's confirmation from Eskom this morning that later this evening we will move to stage 2 load shedding after being on stage 3 at the moment and stage 4 for 2 days until last night. I hope you enjoyed the celebration. At the same time, it appears a ship owned by the company Car Power Ships passed around our coast this week. You'll remember how that was the company that would use liquefied natural gas generating capacity on ships. They would be anchored in 3 harbours off our coast, and it has been hugely controversial. The contracts would see them get a 20-year contract on an emergency basis. Dr. Roland Ngam is the Programme Manager for Climate Justice and Socio-Ecological Transformation at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. He joins us now. Dr. Ngam, good afternoon to you. It's been a really hard week for South Africans around power. To be on stage 4 load shedding, I mean, frankly, you can't run a business like that. Are you also expecting a tough winter? There are predictions in the extreme case of 100 days of load shedding. I mean, that would be devastating.
Yes, Stephen, good afternoon to you and all the viewers. This is something that we have become used to. Eskom announcing that anything between 37 and about 101 days of load shedding, especially during the winter months. It was very predictable that we would have load shedding this week, considering that every time there is a cold snap, demand surges and Eskom capacity generally is unable to meet that demand. And I was really not surprised, and I will agree with the experts who have been saying that Eskom should announce to the nation that we are going to be in this for about 3-4 years, and we announce a kind of Eskom state of emergency in order to deal with this crisis.
There's several other things to this. I'm going to come back to what you said because I think it's important. But Eskom may say we're going to have this number of days of load shedding, or we're going to have this number of days of load shedding, or whatever it is. But in fact, for most people, it's far longer than that. So even in the richer parts of Joburg, for example, you get switched off. City Power can't switch you on. El Dorado Park, it's Exhibit A. I mean, they haven't had power for days, which means that, and this starts with load shedding. You know, you get switched off because of load shedding, but you can't get switched back on. What that means is the impact is far worse than just stage 4 load shedding.
Yes, for many communities, parts of Soweto, parts of El Dorado Park, like you just mentioned, you have a base station which gets hit and it can come back on. And in many parts of the country, you've got people who really have not had power for a very, very long time. Also, the people who have issues in municipalities that have not been able to keep up with payments and all that. The problems are really far wider than that, and the impact to the economy is really a lot more than what we are talking about now with the 7 billion that Eskom invested in diesel last year. There is a major contraction of almost 10% to the economy because the problems are much deeper than we are stating.
I brought up the issue of grids because, as I understand it, if we use more renewable energy, so if we use solar panels, for example, there's new technology around what's called microgrids, which would mean that you wouldn't have some of the problems we have in Joburg now. Is that technology moving quite quickly, the idea of microgrids coming off renewable energy?
A city in Australia, a city of about 2 million people, has just gone about 1 week without fossils. So this really busts the myth that you absolutely need fossils to complement and so on. And Eskom also has just offered land in Mpumalanga, which should bring about 1,000 megawatts of electricity capacity very quickly after the amendment of the Electricity Regulation Act. And so what we should really be doing is looking at microgrids in many different parts of the country instead of centralizing them in a few power plants that keep breaking down. And we have been talking about this for more than 3 decades because even before 2007, the government had been warned to take off 50% of the fossil capacity. And so microgrids really, according to the International Energy Agency, are much cheaper than the bills that take about 10, 15, 20 years, as we've seen in Medupi and Kusile. And really, I don't know why we don't invest a lot more in that right now.
Then you mentioned, and I do want to go back to your point, that we should declare a sort of state of emergency on Eskom. I mean, you could argue we've had a state of emergency for about 13, 14 years. What kind of action would we take? I mean, I'm frankly out of ideas for Eskom at the moment. I wonder sometimes if Andre de Ruyter feels the same, I'm afraid, poor man.
I agree with one Stephen Rogers who once said that we should really plan for 5 years of load shedding, state that very clearly to the citizens, and we do what is necessary to get the country out of the quagmire that it is in. For over 15 years, South Africa has lost 1 trillion rand. That is according to the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Now, how do you solve the problem? In my opinion, I believe that we should really have a dual-track approach with the windows that Minister Gwede Mantashe has announced, and thankfully we have 2 renewable windows that are running at the moment and are about to come on stream. The presidency should also have a strategic plan like what you have in Moekloof, which is supervised directly by the presidency, where we have another track of electricity production, which this time is done in the form of giving subsidies to households to set up rooftop panels. Setting up rooftop PVs is going to ease the pressure on Eskom and at the same time improve availability and not hit the economy so hard.
In other words, we should do what they've been doing in Germany for nearly 20 years. I mean, it goes back a very long time. Dr. Ngam, the other issue is around gas. And I mean, there is a strong group of people who say that what we should do is build more gas generation capacity. Car power ships sort of comes into this, it sort of doesn't as well. The idea is that gas is a sort of transitional phase. Do you see it like that, or do you think we shouldn't use fossil fuels at all?
I think the issue with gas really is the problems that it will have in terms of water. You've seen what we've just gone through in South Africa for over the past 10 years. At the same time, we also have the problems with the insurgents in Mozambique. That is really not necessary at a time when the International Energy Agency has said that the price of solar and wind has come down by almost 80%. And so if we have an 80% reduction in these energy sources, why are we not really moving towards universalizing solar PVs and installing more wind? That is much cheaper for the economy, and it is going to come on stream much faster. There is discoveries all over Africa at the moment of gas. Morocco, Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, etc. But how long do you take to set up a gas power station? It takes at least a decade. And so we should be moving faster to install what is available right now.
It was interesting to watch Eskom this week, and I thought in a way it was quite assertive of Eskom to sort of point out things that government could do to avert load shedding. Talking about getting more generation capacity on the grid. I've heard other people talk about sorting out the way the grid actually works to allow more people on. What did you read into that? I mean, is Eskom right to sort of, I think, very carefully, very politely, perhaps turn the mirror back a little bit to national government, or should Eskom take more responsibility than it's currently taking?
I think Andre de Ruyter has been talking about this for about 2 years now. The fact that there is too much pressure on Eskom to run optimally all the time. Right now, Eskom runs really at 60% capacity because if we are honest, this round of load shedding and the last one knocked off about 20,000 megawatts from the grid. And so Eskom really has been asking for help for a very long time. And the announcement about Eskom land being availed to independent power producers to generate upwards of about 1,000 megawatts capacity. That's what the director announced recently. I think all of that really is talking to the need to have a buffer. And because Eskom itself cannot generate that buffer quickly enough, it needs people to come onto the grid to produce that extra that it needs. At any one time, we should have at least 10,000 megawatts of buffer. And because of Eskom's liquidity issues, all coal-fired power plants and so on, the open cycle gas turbine units that burn at such expensive cost and so on, we really need more people generating electricity. And that is what it is about.
Dr. Roland Ngam, I really appreciate the time. Thanks very much indeed. Program Manager for Climate Justice and Socio-Ecological Transformation at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, South Africa. Well,